At the gate of Capital City, the guards were shocked when they saw the name Russel Raymond. Although his clothes looked shabby, his surname carried weight, since the Raymonds were known as a foundation family. After checking him, the guard allowed Russel to enter. The onlookers wondered if they knew him and soon learned that he indeed belonged to the Raymond family. They were surprised by his appearance, as he was dressed more like an aristocrat. Some began to think that perhaps the foundation family was not as prestigious as they had imagined. One person mentioned having heard that the White Tower was recruiting mercenaries and questioned if that was the reason for Russel's presence. However, they concluded that Russel did not even look like a peasant, and an aristocrat working as a mercenary would be unusual. Russel, finding their chatter noisy, continued walking until he finally entered the capital, Camelot. He explored the interior, his gaze fixed on the magic tower where the kingdom's guardians resided. Once, he had worked tirelessly to gain entry there, hoping to preserve his family's honor after his father's death in the war against the Empire. Forced to flee their castle, he had dreamed of joining the tower as a way to restore their legacy. But that dream had always been out of reach, an impossible one. He had been expelled from the academy even before he could apply. When he was expelled, his teacher had explained that Russel had failed 3 subjects, the first in the academy's history. The teacher had acknowledged Russel's talent in theory, but pointed out that he couldn't even break through to the second circle, which meant he would struggle with mana vein narrowing. He had asked why Russel didn't consider another path instead of insisting on becoming a mage. Russel had felt miserable, convinced that his thin, fragile mana veins were to blame. He could never absorb more than a limited amount of mana, nor could he release it properly. For a mage, it was the harshest punishment imaginable. He recalled how, during his mercenary career, he had managed to reach the second circle, but even then he remained nothing more than a third-rate mage. While he sat nearby, lost in thought, the tower's doors opened. The staff announced that the registration for temporary jobs had ended for the day and told everyone to return the next morning. The waiting crowd was furious and disappointed, having wasted half a day. One man muttered that beggars couldn't be choosers and mentioned hearing that the museum was hiring temporary mages. Another mocked him, saying the museum only took first circle mages for menial cleaning work, and trying there would only be humiliating. Russel stayed seated for a moment, staring at the tower, then checked his pouch. He had only a single gold coin. With that, he decided to head to the Louvreum, the Great Museum. Inside, a supervisor walked with 3 new recruits, declaring that the Louvreum was the largest museum in the kingdom and would be hosting aristocrats that week. The place had to remain spotless. Russel was one of those 3 recruits. The man sternly warned them to control their wind spells while cleaning, as any damage would carry heavy consequences. Russel silently judged him as dramatic and thought most of the artifacts were probably fake anyway. Then something caught his eye. He noticed a room labeled Fantastical Species. The sight stirred a strange familiarity within him. At that moment, an object in his pocket began to vibrate. It was his mother's ring. He pulled it out, and as he glanced toward the species room, his feet carried him forward on their own. The supervisor and the other 2 went ahead, but after a while, he realized they hadn't noticed his absence. Inside, he stood before the massive skeleton of a dragon. The vibration of the ring grew stronger, as though it were trying to tell him something his mother had once known. He closed his eyes, recalling the time when he had visited the place with her. A faint sensation, almost like a memory, stirred within him. He examined the dragon's hoard and noticed that the ring resembled the creature's eye. He wondered why it seemed to weep and what had drawn him there. As he placed the ring against it, the vibration ceased. For a moment, he thought he had simply imagined it all. But then the ring flared with a blinding light. He realized the dragon's hoard and the eye had resonated, awakening something ancient. A dragon materialized before him and declared that Russel was destined to be the cornerstone of a new mythology. It granted him another chance, for the sake of that mythology. It was then that he realized the wheels driving the world had cracked, and that the long-awaited fate was beginning. He understood that the divine Dragon King's eye was examining the world's information, while the status window and missions of Victor Russel were being activated. Russel heard someone calling him. As he opened his eyes, wondering whose voice it was, he noticed the tone was angry and familiar. He suddenly found himself back in a classroom where a teacher had struck him with a book, remarking that although Russell's grades were good, he must have had a lot of nerve to fall asleep during the teacher's class. Russell was shocked to see Professor Hubert, even though he had already passed away. He then looked around at the other students and wondered what was happening. Noticing his clothes, he touched his face and questioned whether he had gone back to the past. Hubert felt annoyed and said it was unlike Russell, but added that Russell would still be punished, assigning a few penalties to make him get out of the situation. Russell wondered if they had traveled through time and questioned whether, if it had been caused by a magic button, it could even be called magic. He then recalled the dragon's words, thinking they had surely said it was another chance. Realizing that his ring was also missing, he wondered if his mother had it. Hubert stepped out of the class, calling Russell and telling him it was unlike him to fall asleep during a lesson. Russell went down to apologize, and Hubert remarked that they needed to have a one-on-one conversation, asking Russell to come to his office during lunch. Russell agreed, and Hubert left, mentioning that he would be waiting there. Russell then wondered how long it had been since he last got into trouble, yet still found himself enjoying it. Suddenly, a bully tried to hit him, and Russell questioned what kind of nonsense it was. Another one went to attack him again, commenting that he looked too relaxed, but their leader stopped them, pointing out that they were being watched by the professor. The leader thought to himself that he had told Russell to take notes for him. Russell then remembered the boy was Coma Frederick. Frederick warned that if Russell did not want to die, he should follow him to the bathroom. They all three walked ahead, and Russell wondered if things like this really happened. Then he noticed a screen appear before him, showing a mission to escape from bullying and teach those three classmates a lesson. He questioned whether it was just an illusion, but when he tried to touch the screen, he found his hand pass through it. Frederick, angered, called out to Russell, wondering why he wasn't coming. He said that running was useless since they were inside the academy, and if Russell was scared, he should at least try. Russell decided to ignore the mission for now and instead focus on teaching them a lesson. After several years of living as a mercenary, this was nothing compared to the killings he had witnessed in bed. Compared to the monsters he once faced, these boys were almost cute. Holding a cigar, Frederick remarked that Russell had finally decided to kill them. Russell agreed, calling him a bedbug. Another boy commented that Russell seemed to have gone mad, then tried to beat him, but Russell dodged and delivered a brutal punch that sent him falling. The second boy attacked as well, but Russell struck him in the face, defeating him too. Frederick mocked that since Russell couldn't use magic, he had resorted to cheap martial arts, which was only expected from a fallen family. He added that Russell couldn't use magic within the academy building anyway. As he spoke, Frederick slipped rings onto his 4 fingers and pointed out that Russell didn't seem to know they could use small artifacts. With that, he rushed forward to attack Russell as well. Russell easily stopped Frederick's hand, twisted it, and broke it, making Frederick scream in pain before collapsing to the floor. He ended up kneeling before Russell. Russell wondered if Frederick had been pushed down in ranking by his brothers, abandoned even by his own family as a fool. He thought that Frederick acted timidly when facing someone strong, but bullied the weak. Trash like him had no right to speak of Russell's family name. Russell glared at him with authority, and just as he was about to strike, Frederick begged him to wait and listen. Ignoring the plea, Russell struck him and left, warning them to behave properly from then on. He added that if they didn't want to die, they should follow that order. Afterward, Russell sat in a corner, wondering if he had gone overboard, his eyes heavy with exhaustion. Suddenly, the screen appeared again, informing him that he had obtained the lowest-grade magic stone, which was consumable. Holding the stone in his hand, Russell saw the screen's description and wondered if he was supposed to eat it. He hesitated at first, but eventually decided to eat the stone, thinking it was similar to recreation and must be another opportunity. Suddenly, he felt something strange within his body as notifications appeared, showing that he had absorbed the mana from the stone. Russell realized the mana was flowing through him, and the mana within his circle was steadily increasing. After a while, it stabilized, and he understood that with this method, he could surely overcome mana vein narrowing. The downfall of his family, his expulsion from the academy, and his life as a third-rate mercenary mage, all of it could now be changed by him. He then knocked on Hubert's office door and was asked to come in and sit. As Russell entered, He noticed tea and cookies already placed on the table. Hubert remarked that Russell didn't seem like himself that day and wondered if he was going through something difficult. Taking a sip of tea, Hubert mentioned he had heard rumors that Russell was being bullied by his classmates. Russell thought about how, in his previous life, Hubert had been someone who never gave up on him until the very end, and he had always wanted to say that. Instead, he replied there was nothing to worry about and thanked the professor. Hubert said it was only natural for him to take care of his students, but since Russell had been dodging in class, he would need to be punished, and it wouldn't be easy. He then assigned Russell the task of writing an analytical report on pages 62 to 74 of Intensive Elemental Studies, a section even upper-year students struggled with. Russell also discovered a mission linked to completing Professor Hubert's assignment, with the reward being another lowest-grade mana stone. He realized that even assignments were treated as missions. When Hubert asked if the task was too difficult for him, Russell denied it and thanked him for the assignment. If you like this video, so comment down for the next part.